The summer landing event is over and I got my hands on Bussard, the top vehicle reward for the naval tasks. As usual, I'll review the ship and give my opinion on whether it's worth it or not. The one thing I must note is that my Bussard is not spaded in the footage you're seeing, though I don't believe it makes too much of a difference. As usual, we start with her main armament. Bussard is armed with two 76mm guns and two single mounts, one at the front and one at the rear. These of course are identical to the ones found in the Tech 3 Albatross, and can be found on other vessels like the British Peacock and the Italian Sparviero. And they're quite speedy, but vulnerable to enemy fire due to their size. They get a choice between high explosive and high explosive variable time fuse, and this is one of those few occasions where just using AGVT might not be the best option. But in my experience it's fine loading nothing but AGVT. Just keep in mind that it has lesser filler than the regular HE. The lack of shells with any armor piercing capability can be rather limiting in some situations, but I've personally not had too many problems because of it. The other thing to mention of course is the rate of fire. It fires more than one shell per second. This is both a blessing and a curse, as it allows you to deal damage rather quickly, but also rapidly drain your rather small ammo load. Each gun carries 85 shells in the ready rack and 30 in reserve, but if you don't actively keep in mind your ammunition, you will be sure to run out of it, at the worst of times. Next, the sole feature where Bussard differs from Albatross, the secondary armament. Bussard gets two MG3s and two 50 cals. These can be ignored for the most part, to be honest. They do serve a minor purpose as anti-air weapons, but can't be relied upon in this role. They also serve as backups when you don't have parts and lose both of your main guns, but they won't save you there either. As for explosive ordnance, there are two torpedoes mounted at the rear of the ship. These have a range of 20 km, a speed of 61 km an hour, and a payload of 250 kg of TNT. These are rather lackluster due to their poor speed, and thanks to another quirk, their launch. They can be a bit of a handful to use in cover as you need to turn around before travelling at the target. By the way, this turn is always to the right, so keep it in mind. I wouldn't recommend equipping them as they can also be an explosive hazard to you, and usually more so than they are a threat to the enemy. And while speaking of explosive armament, I must address the elephant in the room, the Exocet missile launchers. They're decorations. Period. They haven't been a functional module even since the Albatross was added to the Tech 3, and Bussard doesn't change this. If they do ever become functional, then Bussard might become more interesting, but so will the regular Tech 3 Albatross. But that would most certainly be paired with BR increase as well. So for now, they serve no other purpose than being some filler on your deck. When it comes to Bussard's other characteristics, mobility is fine, but perhaps a bit too slow when stock. I haven't spaded her yet, but it looks to improve by a bit when spaded. She's fairly nimble stock, so I'm looking forward to the improvements there when I do finally spade Bussard. Her survivability is one of the downsides. Bussard is a very big target with no noticeable armor, and since it's a coastal vessel it has a simplified damage model. The gun mounts are also massive and unarmored, meaning you can quickly lose your main armament and be left defenseless against whatever your opponent happens to be. Be very aware of this as I get into my next point. Playstyle. This is probably the most difficult part to master when it comes to the Bussard, and vessels like it. The main armament is potent but limited in ammunition, so from that perspective you'd want to be close to ensure hits. However, your survivability is very poor, so you really should stay at range. And then comes her BR. Bussard sits at 3.7. Destroyers will be a frequent occurrence, and pray you don't get fully up there to 4.7, where cruisers lie. And here's where the fighting at range again becomes something difficult, as most destroyers easily outrange Bussard, and Bussard can do best against them when she's closer, and can more easily target specific modules. But I recommend just staying at range and seeking out ample cover. Bussard is really much more of a support sniper than anything else. Coastal vessels, like Bussard, are difficult to play successfully, but it is possible with enough know-how. So now, is Bussard worth it? No. If you plan to spend the actual money on it? No, it really isn't. I don't see why it would be worth it. It is pretty much identical to the Tech 3 Albatross, both in function and in gameplay. Bussard comes stock and doesn't have any premium bonuses, and the only difference isn't even all that useful to it. During the event its price varied between 1,000 and 11,000 golden eagles depending on how many stars you earned and if you wanted the skin or not. I see no reason why you'd pay real money to acquire what is basically a Tech 3 ship. And a Tech 3 ship that is rather difficult to play successfully too. Nowadays it goes for about 23 Gaijin coin on the marketplace, which really, again, is not worth it. If you got it for free during the event, I hope you can enjoy this vessel. If you didn't get it, Albatross is most certainly equal to it. I hope this was useful to some of you. I would have gotten it out earlier if the dev server for Direct Hit didn't get in my way. Goodbye, and may your seas be calm.